This the if you have your computers now, you can basically download it from the Blackboard, but you don't have to, because I just showed it graph here and describe the problem that the case study describes. This case study is about two things. First, scarcity. Second, the choice. And the main problem of economics that we discussed last time was, what was it? What was the problem that economists are usually concerned with? Go on. What was the problem that we said the economists are mostly concerned with? We looked at various branches of economics, the streams of economics that deal with different scarcity. Yeah, it's the scarcity that we're looking at. As economists, the word economy comes from the word economize, You have to economize. Given that everything is scarce, and we said we have infinite ones, but scarce resources. And this is a case describing the situation in oil and gas market. And if you see the temporal evolution of these two curves, two lines here, these are basically, blue one is gas discoveries over time. There's a sharp increase in there. I think this is when Middle Eastern gas fields were discovered, huge, and oil discoveries. The trend, overall trend, is just downward sloping. These are discoveries, not the consumption. If you look at consumption, it would be sharply increasing, So we have increasing consumption and declining reserves, so discoveries. Because discoveries should usually be more and more to satisfy our needs. And this case study just describes what economists deal with. They need to find ways to allocate the resources that is available, in this case the resources are oil and gas, to satisfy the needs. And we aren't looking at green technologies or green resources that we have. It looks like the green technologies or green resources, wind technology, using water power to get electricity, to derive electricity, or sun, using the sun, what do you call this, panels? Solar panels. So they are no way as of now to cover at least 10% of our needs apparently. In the UK, 90% of electricity alone is generated using coal power. So coal power gas turbines. So this green technology is not there yet. It won't take us where we want to be. So that's also scarce as well. So this basically describes that given that declining sort of trend of discoveries, we will have sort of time where we will not be able to satisfy all the needs using the available resources apparently. Now there are questions here. By the way, the thing here, that's another thing that described here, is the shale energy or shale boom. They are shale oil basically. They are the different kind of oil. The crude oil usually is the ones that we are consuming currently. When you drill 10 meters down to earth, it comes out in Saudi Arabia now. But at some point, it will be hard to drill that much. I mean, to have that much of oil or that liquid oil. They will be shale oil. There's the hard stuff now. They are all more like rocks. So there's a technology to drill them as well and to exploit them as well. However, it is expensive. Given that oil prices are quite low, what's the oil price now per gallon? International markets? 50? 40, 50? So it's fluctuating between 40, 50, I guess, but I haven't looked at the final one. You may be reading it. The latest oil prices between the amount. And for the shale oil or shale technology to be profitable, it has to be 80 pounds per gallon. So we're still far from being there to use the shale boom as well. So again, another problem for the economists to look at, to look at how we can allocate resources. Now, there are questions. Well, I'm going to skip them. You will try to answer them. This will be an independent study now. Maybe we'll just come back to these questions at some point next week. Instead, now we will concentrate on today's topic and discuss the questions next week once you read through all the... And there will be two case studies then. This one, which is very short, the second one that I've already uploaded, I don't know if you have looked at it. That's more about the demand in matches, football matches. So read that as well. That's longer and more requires a little bit more concentration. And then we can discuss both of these next time then. Okay, so we can start now today something new. Demand analysis.
I just have a question on the previous PowerPoint.
PowerPoints.
Yeah,
Yes.
the last one. In fact, at the end, you put a summary, like what we are supposed to know, and I have one which I cannot answer.
Which one?
It's source data on different measures of economic resource for different economies. What is it referring to?
Oh yes, yes. I eliminated them because it was a business case.
Okay.
Yeah, you can eliminate it. Yeah, it's
Okay.
not there. It was a business case study at the time to discuss different endowments of economies, different economies. The case study was about China, European Union, and US. So you can eliminate that, please. I'll delete that and I re-upload the slides. So we look at the consumers in the market, and through this we analyze demand and see how demand analysis leads us to pricing decisions in business. So all of the economics that we're going to study here will be again applications, a lot of applications in the business, and try to understand through economics through applications of the concepts in business. So today we look at the demand curves. I guess you know what they are. Some of you may have studied in the past. Factors leading to a change in demand. What affects the demand for a product? All the factors, not all of them. We try to understand key ones because it's in economics. Nothing can be analyzed. It's not a science, you know. If it's a chemical science or medical sciences, you could have clear understanding of the effect of a drug by experimenting. But in economics, understanding the effect of factors on demand is very difficult. There's no single factor that, or there's no specific factors that affect demand, but there are many of them, but we look at the key ones. We look at also the price elasticity of demand, or sensitivity of demand to prices, and cross price and income elasticities. And then we develop sort of applications, so we look at the applications of these concepts in the case of business. How revenues are determined by looking at the demand analysis, or looking at the elasticities of price elasticity of demand of different products. And we look at pricing strategies and see how consumer surplus can be used to exploit the available demand for different kinds of products within the same market. And look at the role of market research. Is anyone planning to go into market research? This is a very interesting job, or prospects of in this country is good for market research. A lot of market research firms are based here. The US ones based here, European ones have the headquarters as well, I guess. Have you heard about market research firms? Mintel, Data Monitor. I think Economic Intelligence Unit also does a little bit of market research. So they recruit MBAs with wide sort of understanding of wide business areas. Not MSCs who understand only, or those who specialize in specific areas. You guys are MBAs, so you are more of a candidate for them than MSC. So consider for your job applications the market research organizations, becoming a data analyst or becoming a research analyst for specific market. Yeah, that's possible here in the UK too, if you want to work. Especially they also hire in research interns. They call it research interns. If you search for Google for research internships at market research firms, you should see short-term internships, part-time internships, where you will be dealing huge amounts of data, market data. It is more like admin job initially, but it actually gives you the insight into what you could do once you graduate. And if you network well within the organization, then once you go there, I'm sure you will be employed within 6 months of graduation. So think about it as a career. And then you can always, from small company to big company, you can always transit to the bigger companies. Okay, so the business problem that we're going to look at is how should we price our products, or what price is the best for our our product. So assume you launch their product, and what's the best price? And another thing we have to know is, as a business, is what we are going to do. Should we maximize the firm's profit, or the firm's market share, or the firm's revenues? And usually, firms hold on to one of these three objectives. If you study the business organizations and the managers' objectives, all managers are usually, trying to maximize one of the three. It's difficult to maximize at the same time market share and profit. How do you understand what market share is? What's your understanding of market share of a product or a company, maybe?
Market share is, for example, you have lots of market share. It means that you're present in lots of places, like for example, in different countries or different regions.
Okay, let's take it in the UK. Give an example then of that what you just said. So give an example of a company that has the high or relatively high market share compared to others.
Tesco, for example.
Tesco in retail, groceries, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. The market share is measured in terms of the amount, sorry? Yeah, amount of product they sell or amount of revenue they generate per year relative to the overall industry's revenue. So Tesco is 33% market share now. Has it, but it's actually declining. There is a case study comes at some point in the slides that we'll discuss that as well. That the Tesco's market share is actually shrinking, and others gaining more. Small firms gaining more, and I think if you're reading the newspapers, you might have already guessed what companies I'm talking about in the UK. Yeah.
The market share is linked to the volume or to the value of the company?
Either way, you can
Okay.
have volume as well. If you can manage to measure the volume of the product you sell. Yes, that's also the case.
Okay.
But in terms of revenues, that's easier to gauge.
Mm-hmm.
You can easily find out what the market is, because a lot of even HMRC, for example, has the annual income of the accounts of annual income, or accounts of these companies that show the annual income of each company, basically, and then they put together annual income. Because you look at the grocery market, there are so many different products they sell, and it's very hard to pick up certain item. Maybe Tesco sells 100 tomatoes, and others sell 200 cucumbers, and it probably is one of the differences in the sales volume. But when you look at the dollar values or pound values, that makes more sense, because you can then compare market shares easily in terms of revenue. But it's easier to, it will be easy. It will be good to have the volumes of if it's the same product. Look at the what do you call this? Mobile phone companies, Samsung and Apple. In terms of the volume, I think Samsung is leading. But in terms of the revenues, Apple is leading. They make more revenues. So if you compare them market share in terms of revenues, then stick to revenues for both of them. Yeah, in that case, you will see Apple is probably leading, but because of the price point, maybe because of other factors that I haven't looked at the latest figures. But Apple is also losing market share in terms of revenue, I think, at the moment. So if firm sticks to one objective, it's going to be conflicting to choose the other two, because if you want profit maximization, you want to have highest margin as possible, right? In other words, the difference between revenues and costs has to be high enough for a profit, because then in that case you have to sell at a high price relative to your costs, right? Which means you won't have the highest share of the market. Highest share of the market is when you sell more of the product in terms of volume, or generate more revenue regardless of the cost. Even if you make loss, you may be selling more, right? Yeah, you may sell more at discount, especially these low margin companies, Tesco, Sainsbury's. They have very thin margins on top of cost. They eventually make on some products they make losses, but they have huge market share in terms of value of items they sold, not the volume. Yeah, so this is conflicting again here, and the same as I just mentioned, that it won't be possible to increase the revenues if you want to maximize the profits. So you stick to one of them. Either way, the underpinning factor of these maximization problems is the price. So what is the best price, basically? Yeah, what's the best price that leads us to the achievement of these factors? Yeah, that's the point there. And let's look at some sort of preliminary points on how the prices are determined in the markets. If you go to supermarkets, do you think you can affect the prices of grocery supermarkets, the way they price? You don't.
If there are enough people to work on it, yes.
I mean, as customers.
Yeah, one customer definitely not, but if there are enough customers to
Okay.
actually work on that, of course.
Large enough customers, a number of customers large. If they are large, then it will have an effect. So, in what way do you think? In what way do you think it will be the case?
Well, if you can actually, if you buy a lot of a certain product, the price will rise, and if you don't buy, if you stop buying certain product, price will fall.
Yeah, if you walk away from a good all the time and everyone is doing it, obviously they will think, well, hold on, people aren't buying this. Maybe the price is not right for this product. Yeah. So this is why don't we give buy one get one free? Yeah, half price. Yeah, it's basically half price, but they don't usually say half price because you can next time you come and wait for the half price. So buy one get one free is actually essentially half price. So you're just paying for the one of the goods, but you're taking another one. So you're just paying.
It's
So
better for cash flow.
yeah, that's what it is. Yeah, if you are maximizing revenue, then do the buy one because by discounting you're actually eating into your margins. Yeah, you have a huge margin, but because you discounted already and you're selling two products by 50% discount, you just actually losing your profit maximization objective. But now you change your strategy to maximize the revenues. Yeah, so the pricing decisions do have occur, and supermarkets do tend to listen to people by looking at the behavior of people buying. You must have the Tesco card, club card. If you are new to this country, you may want to get one as well. This is where they analyze your behavior. What products you're buying more. If you buy certain products, they send you vouchers for these products. Next time they say buy one, we'll give you 25p or some sort of a deal on that product. And so they learn your behavior and then package the products for you specifically. And we think that grocery markets usually don't do, but they do this, even if it's a huge number of customers that they target. Because it's a computerized system, isn't it anymore? It doesn't require any human power now or labor. So that's easy. And so supermarkets do listen to customers when they price. Buying a car, obviously you negotiate it. Yeah, this is probably where you always negotiate. Well, you may not negotiate directly, but you are actually negotiating with supermarket if you change your behavior, purchasing behavior, yeah? Preferences and purchasing behavior. But with the buying car, you negotiate. So prices are determined by negotiation there. But even then, they may apply different pricing strategies. They may learn markets, but they will always price relative to their cost structures. Depending on their cost, they add margins and they try to preserve the margins usually. So firms price relative to their costs. So with economics, we look at that as well. But usually this is management accounting and marketing and other areas. But here we'll apply this concepts of economics at some point. So eventually, whatever the shop or whatever the type of the shop, its pricing decisions are based on the costs and consumer willingness, basically, that they usually mean. Okay, so one way to start looking at pricing is we need to understand the demand for the product that you are offering. If you happen to start a business, I think many of you guys would like to start a business, I guess. So if you happen to start a business, I'll give a case study there at some point. There was a funny one where the pricing was, I don't know, out of the blue, basically. It's just the guy lives in Mars, probably, Martian guy, just lives on Earth. Price is something, we'll see. Okay, so the economic approach to pricing is to study the demand for the product. And the way you study is looking at the demand curve, usually. And the demand curve shows the relationship between price and quantity sold. This is actually 10, sorry, this is not 1, this is 10, it's just space. And demand curve usually links the change in price levels to the change in quantities, and as you can see, it's a downward sloping demand curve. It's usually, downward slope. And it's not always straight line. I didn't change I could have said demand line, but it's actually curve, but for the purpose of teaching and easy to make it easier for the student, we usually have the lines, but in reality, curve demand changes over time. Yeah, it could be curve linear. Maybe there's some bumps and maybe it's more concave up, sort of side. But for teaching, we usually use lines and to make it easier for us to understand the concepts. Yeah, so we'll look at the demand analysis now. Any questions on this?
For luxury products, it's not exactly the same.
Yeah, exactly. It's a different types of product. We'll come to that as well. For luxury products, you may not have
Yeah.
perfect linear. Actually, you may not have a perfect linear curve at all, because we look at the business case at the end, where we look at the determinants of demand, and in that case, you will see that the line is actually superimposed. It's forced on the quant demand and price relationship, because the cross section of data usually is not linear, and you will see what I'm trying to say here in due course. Now, what influenced the demand to shift? We're jumping. We are actually going forward by skipping a few points here. But I want to sort of give this, some ideas that are important before we go to and define what demand is, or law of demand is. Now, what determines the demand? Well, obviously, this is the number of people usually determines for a product. Usually, it's the number of customers. Or different factors like immigration also determines the demand for a given price. If original demand curve was this, that originally people were buying 1,000 units for a £5 good, and if holding the price constant, and suddenly you have large migration, and obviously the demand curve should shift for a given price now. However, demand curve alone shows the relationship between price and quantity. So along the demand curve, at this price, for example, this may be £10. Then you will have fewer quantities demanded. So let's go back. Yeah. So at this price, as you can see, quantity demanded is for £10 is 5, but when you reduce the price, it's 10 units. So it's like Tesco giving you buy one get one free. So they reduce basically that amounts to reducing the price to £5, isn't it? So at £10 you buy 5, but because there's one free, you're actually buying 10. Eventually, the overall demand will be 10 units. But when you analyze in the demand curve, it's actually half price, so it's declining. So price moves down, and the quant demand increases. So along the curve, we have the sort of relationship described between demand and then the quantity. But we also need to understand what shifts the demand curve to the left and to the right. What factors? These are, well, drop in the ocean, obviously, but you can have huge amount, starting with immigration and blah, blah, blah. But we look at the key points. You mightn't have the immigration all the time in the city, right? But you have substitutes coming in every time. So substitute products, which usually affect the demand for a product. Consumers' income, possibly the economy evolves over time from low income to middle income to advanced income, and consumers' income increases. The people's income increases. Tastes and preferences. We usually see this very often, and I see it very often myself. And I was thinking about this afternoon. What trend we look at? Have you noticed the trend and tastes and preferences changing all the time in terms of clothing, fashion clothing? I see it in the young fashion usually, and among the fashion clothes for the women. It's much faster than the trend that we have for men usually. 5 years ago, certain clothes were not selling at all, and all the time, with all the advertising, with all the fashion shows, these clothes are not being worn. So 5 years ago, I didn't see them, and now I see them. So the demand for these goods, originally, if they were here now, we could see for the same price, we shifted over time to the right. We'll come to that in a minute. So by looking at this, and also price expectations will also affect the demand for the product. Yeah, go on.
Just by substitutes, you mean competition?
Yeah, substitutions. Yeah, competition is usually provided by the competitors.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll come to that when we do define the market's competition. But for now, substitutes, we look at just the product itself, not the competition, not the market structure.
Okay.
And complements, I guess You know the word complements. Who doesn't know the word complement? Everyone is happy? Because I have to ask, I just didn't realize that. So price expectations. That also changes. So you might bring your consumption to today if you think that some products price is going to increase. Yeah, a lot of people buy in advance in the expectation that prices will rise in the future. And in that case, as of now, today, the demand would be this curve, but it will shift. Another thing that I should tell you by now is this, should have told by now, is that these are not actual quantities. These are preferences or the demand in the sense that it's a conceptual sort of thing. This, for £5, we don't have exact quantity demanded because it's not possible to experiment in the market. We cannot experiment with the consumers. What we can gauge is this relative conceptual. We can develop conceptual terms. So this demand curve is not observable in reality. Again, this is a theoretical construct and concept. So we look at it as related to the real market. Yeah. In general, the demand curve describes the relationship between the price and quantities. Okay, so these are not observable products or quantities. So they're just to understand what we could expect in real life. Because all that economists do is model the actual complex relationship using the simple techniques like we just have here. This model is actually a very simplified observation or a very simplified model of the reality. In reality, demand curve is not flat. At the same time, we may not have exact numbers here. But that's a way forward for analyzing the markets. So let's start one by one with the substitutes and complements. What shifts basically the demand curve between the points? One thing is look at the substitutes. They could be Coca-Cola and Pepsi. Any rival product is a substitute usually. We will also define what substitute is by looking at price elasticities at some point. Yeah, by applying the rules of calculus. If let's say a demand for a product at the moment is QD0, and the rival company or the competitor reduces the price, and you're holding at £5 your prices, then your demand curve shifts to the left. Yeah, if Coca-Cola holds on to the price but Pepsi reduces, there's a possibility of shift of Coca-Cola customers from buying from Cola to Pepsi, basically. You may have experienced that yourself in your life. Any examples that you may have changed your mind along the way when you went to buy something and then you realize that the price is high and you just switched to certain items? That's what we're describing here, basically. I do a lot, actually. I do a lot of research on Google before going out to buy. I may have some sort of needs and wants, but then it's usually, again, this problem kicks in, the economics problem kicks in, that I don't have infinite resources. We'll have to, this affects the business's profits as well. The business that's selling and observing its own demand curve, that will, because of me going out to buy the substitute product or rivals product, their demand curve shifts as well. So each of us have the price determining sort of effects on these companies' products. Complements, for example, they are purchased usually jointly. So if look at the printer and cartridge, they come together. If you buy a printer but you don't have a cartridge, it doesn't work. You may buy a cartridge but you don't have the printer. So their prices affect each other. If you buy a printer for £20, you'll be very happy. This cheap printer with a scanner and copier. But in fact, if you don't have cartridge, it's just useless, isn't it? I have one. And the crazy thing about it is that there are 5 different colors. 4. And if one color dries up or empties, I have to replace it because the whole thing doesn't work. So they go together. They are complements. And if I am the sort of if I have the demand curve for this market in the original, as a 0 point demand curve, then with the prices rising for the cartridge, demand for printers will shift back. Because I could go to laser printer now, not to buy the. I may abandon the idea of buying desk jets because of printer prices, or the toothbrush that you have, electric toothbrush. Yeah, the actual handset unit is cheaper, but then the brushes are very expensive. So they are complements basically. Yeah, so the substitutes and complements affect the demand for a product. It's also not possible to have a unique product to avoid all these problems on the go. Yeah, businesses will have to have some sort of to start a business. You start with something what's already in the existing market, but with a different sort of innovative idea, right? But still, your product is a substitute or a complement for something else. So this will help you to analyze this as well. Another thing that affects the demand curve is the income, consumer's income, the household income. Let's assume. Usually, in recessions, household income declines. People lose jobs. Maybe there is austerity in the workplace, voluntary redundancy. So, for a product, maybe we have the original demand curve, but with the low income, we will start purchasing less of what we've been purchasing. Yeah, sudden sort of shock to the income will reduce our demand for the goods. So again, companies supplying certain products that we are buying will have to face a shrinking demand or shifting demand to the left with the decline in the income that we have. If the good is normal, in that case, but if the good is inferior, inferior means obviously low quality, but in economics we don't mean inferior good being the low quality or bad product. It just means that these are products that we don't usually consume when we are richer. We get richer. You can give me the example yourself. When you have low income, especially when you're a student, you tend to buy the low brand, own brand goods, right? We tend to buy, not you. I was a student myself as well. I would go and browse the cheap and buy the cheapest. When I started working, and my income just boosted my wealth, and I started buying Waitrose, and then it goes on. Maybe I go to buy the family branded items, the family owned shops, organic shops. Yeah, these are more expensive, but they give the same satisfaction basically as the bread from Tesco but obviously they have the special feeling, special feel that gives you. So these goods are inferior goods. For example, rice. You will tend to eat more rice food when you're poorer or when you're a student compared to when you start working. Because when you start working, there's high chance of going out to dinner at high-end restaurants, right? Imagine being an investment banker tomorrow. What you do? Do you buy rice again back to Tesco? No. So usually with income rising, these goods usually, demand for these goods fall. Yeah. So that if the good is inferior, then high income actually doesn't mean shift to the right, but it actually shifts back for these goods, like egg is another example. Boiled eggs that you don't usually eat when you have more money. You tend to switch. Okay. Tastes and preferences. We talked about fashion earlier. Yeah, it shifts over time. People's preferences change, tastes change, and fashion products are usually the time. In this case, we're talking about the time itself, not the fashion. Over time, fashion and trends affect the curves and preferences of people. Technology is another example. Push-button phones and smartphones. Since the smartphones started leading the market of the mobile phones, the demand for push-button phones actually shrank much faster. And then basically it's one of the technology factors that you can look at. Flat screen TVs and CRT TVs, for example, they also reduce demand for, increase the demand for flat screens, technologically better or innovative products, I should say here. You can also think of Kodak single-use film cameras. This is interesting. Until last year, I used to see Kodak single-film single-use film cameras. Did you see this as well? If you lived here, you will see them in Tesco hanging on the sides of the aisles. They were still selling this. We moved, from film cameras to digital cameras a long time ago, but they're still selling. So basically, what I thought at the time was like Kodak wasn't doing the market research. They were just supplying what they can produce, and they should have plenty. But anyway, so they were behind. Maybe that's why they are out of the business now. I don't know what they produce now. I haven't seen a Kodak branded item since last year. So they're out of market, and they demand, because of the digital photography and technology, the demand must have shifted back. Another factor that affects is advertising, that determines our tastes and preferences. This is biggest factor probably. Can you all see advertising? It basically is the purpose of advertising is to shift the demand. In other words, to holding the price to shift this demand to the right. That's the purpose in economics that we look at in advertising, and that's what the businesses also try to do: increase the demand, attract more customers than they did have before. So, not the existing ones, but the additional customers that we want. Advertising basically provides information. You can think of celebrity effect. The advertisers or advertising companies not only provide the goods and the features of the goods that they want you to know, but they also promote the lifestyle that comes with these new products. So if you see David Beckham with the watch, you see young people getting crazy. Yeah, they just go and they want to buy it because his lifestyle is that he wants to they want to live the lifestyle of these people. Yeah, so the advertising affects their preferences and tastes that way. Or Royal effect. That's interesting. In the UK, this is a big thing. I don't know if it happens across continental Europe or in other side of the ocean, but it actually is a big effect. If you read the title of this slide, the firm, a lucky firm, I don't remember the name, but I read it and then I captured this there. Basically, this robe and all the outfit that George is wearing basically sold out within an hour. So this is how strong the Royal effect here. So but they cannot sponsor you for every company because they don't need money. But if you happen to see your products being worn by them, I think this big shift in your demand curve for the product, and out of stock now within an hour. I mean, there are 62 million people in the UK, and you have probably about 12 million households, and at least 50,000 of them buying means it's actually 50,000 goods out of shelf within an hour, basically. As a big increase, because this probably has been sitting on the shelf for a while, but advertising does have this sort of big effect. Yeah, so that's one thing that we look at in running the business. Yeah, right. So let's look at advertising expenditure in the UK, just to give you a business case here of the effect of advertising and how important it is. From 1988 to 2014, this data comes from, well, we don't have this thing. It's from market research company, basically. Hopefully one or two of you guys, or maybe more of you guys, will be working there. These are at current prices, billions, and these are constant prices. I guess you know what the difference between the current and constant prices.
What is it?
This is basically inflation-free. This is volume, inflation-free price. This is with the inflation. So basically, it's not entirely inflation-free, but we control for inflation in this constant prices. Current prices are measured in the pounds of the year, right? So when you take into account the inflation, this would be the amount actually, not this amount.
Mm-hmm.
And as percent of GDP, this is, I think, more likely to be constant. Yes.
Sorry, constant prices. Is that when somebody might use the phrase in today's money?
This is the one.
Okay, got it.
Current, yeah. This is in prices of 2014, as it says, but yeah, it's in today's current. Percentage of GDP. You see, UK GDP is about 2 trillion, and 1% of 1.36%. Well, back then it wasn't, but today even. Look at this, 1.04. This is a huge amount of spending that businesses are spending, 104. It's not changing. The reason it's not changing is that advertising increasing, and GDP is also increasing at the same time. So actually, in fact, the volume is increasing even if the percentage fraction is not increasing. Yeah.
Yeah, but the actual percentage has dropped,
The actual percentage is dropped, but
which is
the amount of spending is higher. Yeah. Actual percentage is dropped. Yeah. So it doesn't necessarily mean that businesses are not advertising or not.
of course.
Yeah, but yeah, actual percentage is dropped.
I can see in
Mhm.
2008 and 9 that actually the amount of expenditure has dropped also.
Oh, since then, yes, this is the crisis period you mean. So there's a fast increase and decline in there. Yes, that's point in the data. Yeah, but I was describing the year-in point in this year, just single year to say that there's a change. But in fact, yes, financial crisis of 2008 just crippled a lot of businesses, and advertising was probably not effective at the
But
time.
actually, more companies were advertising by the end of 2008.
Here, yeah. Yeah.
No, by the end of 2008.
Well,
After
this is for the whole of 2008.
Yeah, but in 2009. In the beginning
This is for the whole of 2009.
Yeah, but companies actually advertised more.
In 2009,
Yeah. So
Maybe.
probably the advertising prices dropped by then, or
could possibly many factors you can think of. Yeah, but we're looking at the aggregate data. We are not looking at the reasons why it declined. But this is just to give you this sort of idea about how important advertising is. In terms of trends in the data, you can actually study it separately, see what factors are increasing or why there is increase in advertising, a sudden drop in there. Maybe, as you said, advertising companies slashed the prices and it attracted more companies advertising. Well, again, that's some other study to look at, yeah, if you look at the trends. Yeah. Okay, another thing that may be interesting here is the advertising expenditure by sector. It's probably very hard to see what slices are belonging to one of these. Basically, the one key points here we look at is the internet. That's 37.2. I guess this is internet. Huge jump in internet advertising from 2005 to 2014. So the importance of internet advertising, and it's cheaper, I guess. This must be this slide, isn't it?
what did it eat from?
You can have a look and check. You can see that some of the items declined. This has gone down to this much, and that's newspapers. So it could be eating into others. It could also be organic increase as well. But others obviously look smaller if internet advertising increases, right? Not necessarily eating from others, or in other words, capturing the share of other sectors, but what the point is that advertising also getting cheaper apparently, because internet advertising is cheaper, isn't it? You could have you could apply for advertising on YouTube channels. You could speak to the proprietor of these YouTube channels and then put your advertising there, or through Google. So it's cheaper than advertising on TV. Anyway, so that's just statistics, simple
What is
statistics.
the 25%? Which one is the 25%?
Which 25 is it? This one.
Yeah.
This
what-
one
what
and
is-
this one
yeah, exactly.
is coming from
Television.
I can't-
television apparently, yeah. Yeah. It's probably hard from there. Looks like it's holding on to 25%. Television is holding on to 25%. This is one of the most expensive advertising channels. Means of advertising. If you do television advertising, it's very expensive because you need to pay for these people who act in this advertising. Plus, airing is millions of pounds more, and so on and so forth. But the incredible, remarkable point is the internet advertising. Huge jump with the coming of YouTube and Google. I guess this probably captured a lot of new customers. Plus, others obviously look smaller because they are capturing. May not necessarily be the case that people advertising on newspapers moving into may not be the case, because newspapers also have internet editions, so that's also included in here. It's just internet advertising is bigger now. And another way of looking at advertising and how it is moving, it's evolving over time, is looking at the top 20 advertisers in 2013, and you probably realize or recognize them very quickly. BSkyB is always on TV. You know, they're this is the biggest firm apparently in the UK spending in terms of spending. Procter and Gamble is all the hygiene products. BT, the internet bundles, and BT is always on the tube all the time. And TalkTalk somewhere. Yeah, where is TalkTalk? Yeah, this is also a new group, but it's actually advertising quite. So, yeah, firms realize that advertising do shift their demand, and a huge market for advertising business. And if you are into creative industries, maybe you become chief executive officer of one of the advertising companies. It's just something that you may want to think about. A friend of mine came together with, I think, 4 of their classmates from MBA, and they started the consulting service, and eventually they all moved into businesses. I think the demand for their business wasn't that enough. But you could think of advertising business as well. If you can revolutionize or create a new, or you can exploit the technologies now available. You could start 4 or 5 of you just chip in and start the business as well as in advertising sector, and employ creative minds to come up with new product ideas. And in terms of market value, I guess this is the millions of revenues, in pounds. This is the revenues that make. Vodafone wasn't spending much, was it? It's somewhere at the bottom. Yeah, it's 11th. Yeah, but it's actually in terms of market value or revenue they're generating is quite leading actually. And then Virgin. The interesting thing, Virgin as a brand is very diverse. You have Virgin Atlantic now, Virgin Galaxy, or Galactic. Either way, they want to put people on the edge of the space, and they have Virgin credit cards. Virgin. At some point, I saw Virgin Cola. I don't know if they are selling it elsewhere, but in the UK they had Virgin Cola as well as a substitute for Coca-Cola, but it disappears. So do push their revenues upwards. Okay, so this is just some statistics. So let's look at
Yeah, so this table shows that Vodafone is the company in UK who is earning the...
That's earnings in 2012, yeah, it's revenue.
Okay, and it was the company who did the best profits. That's it.
I don't know the profit though, because it depends on their costs.
Mm.
But this is in terms of sales, that
Okay.
amount of sales, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, go on.
O2 in 2012 was losing money.
O2.
O2 in 2012 was losing money, and they were actually being sold to 3.
Is that the market value?
It's related to the number of
You mean this stock prices? That I don't remember, but when I looked at it, it was the sales. But I'll check that then again. It could be, yeah. It could be the actual total market value in the stock market. Yeah, it could as well be. But I have to check this. But 20 billion. So I'll check that as well. BP, however, I could have been much larger than its 6 billion back in 2012. So I'll have to check that as well, because this a very large company. BP is a very large company, and less than Vodafone is perhaps it's just. In any case, these are brands, so we'll check that as well. It may not capture some of the value in the subsidiaries, but the value that could have been. Okay, I'll check that and update this as well. Okay, there's a business case in preference shifters. Cars, for example, you may have been driving and you will see that there's a preference shift in the car industry. Certain growth here, but sudden shock to the growth in the car sales. This is registrations basically, and there's a huge amount of sort of increase, not in this petrol and hybrid cars, but from other types of cars. The reason is after 2010, I think the government started providing subsidies and incentives to buyers of electric or environmentally friendly cars, and And seeing this, obviously customers will tend to buy more of this. And most of the increase here that we have is actually from this point here and a little bit from the petrol cars. So that's an example of preference shifters. Advertising, for example, there's the subsidies, and these affect the demand curve for the cars, or companies' demand curves for the cars. And other factors that affect is high income, because the electric cars are usually expensive, and with time, incomes also increase given that there is no recession. Or prices are reduced, perhaps in petrol cars. This could also include the subsidies that make the effective price lower, or availability of credit also become more widespread now after 2010. Not during it doesn't include the 2009 financial crisis. And the last factor that shifts the demand or affects the demand curve is the expectations of price changes. So you can think of an example of Brexit. The prices for properties, there's a speculation or expectation that the property price will decline. And if you've been reading the news, you may believe in this, but it looks like it's not actually declining. But when I was looking at this, it was a while ago that I put the Brexit, but it may actually be true. But in any case, in the hope or in the expectation that the prices will decline for the properties, you may, if you are buying the property now, you may hold on, wait until the actual price decline. As a result, the demand for property, the curve for property market will shift to the left, because there are fewer people buying because of the price expectations. Or another example is the gun laws in the U.S. With the election time looming soon. If it's Hillary Clinton, I guess there will be more strict gun laws and demand for guns. If she wins, I think the day she wins, there will be huge sort of demand for guns before the laws kick in. So because it's easier to buy before the gun regulations kick in. So there will be huge demand for gun laws, and I guess AK the Kalashnikovs will probably sell quickly because that's their, it's an important market for Kalashnikovs. They usually don't, probably one of the largest, I guess. The government don't buy guns every day, they buy it once so every 10-20 years, but in the US it's sold every day, so it's possible demand shifter for Russian companies. They're selling in the American conventionals, yeah. So the price expectations do imply a shift in the demand curve. You may have the examples yourselves. Sleeping. What's his name? You may want to wash your face and come back if you want. Sorry, if you want. Yeah, you go out and. Right, so we come to the point where we can talk about law of demand. So, law of demand says holding everything else constant, prices and quantities have negative relationship. So it's the ceteris paribus. This is a Greek word. If anyone from Greece would tell us the literal meaning of what it is, but it's holding other factors constant. Changes in price have a negative effect on quantities. That's law of demand usually, very simple. And we discussed this, how it could be transpiring here, like decline from 10 pounds to 5 pounds leading to 10 units increase. So it could be a case of buy one, get one free, or just actual decline in the price. And all the time we move in the same direction, or this way, or that way. So it's basically a relationship is negative. And can you think of positive relationship between demand and quantities? Anything that you can think of? Is there a positive, an example that you can? Yeah, go.
When you have a lot of demand, you get your initial, like the firm will actually have to pay less for the production of a product. So the more demand there is, even if they keep the same price or drop the price, the profit might actually be the same.
No, we're looking at demand for a product given the price. So not the price. So let's look at this. If I increase the price, do you think people will demand more of that product?
Some of the products, if it's a luxury
It depends
product,
on the elasticity.
Okay, depends on elasticity. Sorry,
it's a
say it.
luxury product, of course.
Ah, yeah, luxury product. Yes, if it's a luxury product, that's one single case in business that looks like that the demand has a positive relationship with price, but in reality it's not. In theory, it's not. By the way, in reality, it does look like, as you just described, that when you increase the handbag, you know, the ladies' handbags. You know, you go to Louis Vuitton and buy this. You look at the price; it's £100. Look at the other one; it's £500. Yeah, the expensive ones will sell. So expensive ones to sell, other ones that usually people purchase. But in theory, or maybe in reality as well, I haven't tried it myself because I don't usually buy luxury products. You could tell me, is that there is no positive relation between price and demand. High prices imply low demand, low price imply high demand. You could actually think of this case. This is the luxury product demand curve. Two of this. Original. Let's say this is the original price. Now, if you increase the price from 100 to 1,000, obviously, moving from this point to this point, the demand increases, right? Demand is increasing. What it is that then you sort of connect these points in a demand curve. This will be positive demand curve because these two are negative. But if you connect these 2 points, given this logic that increasing the price leads to an increase in the quantity, then this will be a positive demand curve. But it's not necessarily actually. It's actually only showing us that preferences shifted this demand curve to this side, not because we can go along the demand curve, positive demand curve. It's just preferences are shifting. Think of it. You go and see a discount on a luxury handbag. I'll come back to that. And you usually think maybe the quality is not as good as it is. Because to be able to see this, you may have to be in the shoes of these people who usually buy the luxury products, and you may actually buying them. So cheaper branded products, but if they have cheaper prices, they tend to sell less compared to the high-priced branded goods because they show the preferences and tastes. Some people have taste for expensive products. Yeah, they expect the price. I mean, they expect the quality to be, at par or at par with the prices, or in terms of, perceptions of this product. High prices command high quality usually. Yeah. If you're comparing these two goods in the same store.
But when you're talking about luxury, it's not a logical purchase; it's an emotional purchase.
That's what it is, preferences. So you might prefer, you might think that high. Okay, what's the definition of emotion you're looking at? Is it like?
It's not logical. It's I want this. I like it. I'm gonna buy it.
I'm gonna buy it. Yeah.
Whatever.
No matter what price.
It's £1,000 or £20,000. I'm buying this.
But looks like it's what it is in the reality, that you come and then buy this because I just liked it. Yeah. We don't look at the price. That's a sort of a market for luxury goods, and how the in reality how the demand works there. But when you analyze it in terms of aggregate data, it looks like high-priced luxury goods have high demand compared to low-priced luxury goods. Yeah, but this is not necessarily implying that demand is in a positive relationship between price and the quantities supplied. It is not necessarily. Yeah, you may bring in the emotion factor in there, but it is not actually. It's just telling us the preferences. Yeah, it's just telling us. I go to the shop and I prefer. I have taste for expensive goods and high quality goods, and I could see that this product was £500, and it's now £50. I wouldn't buy it. I would go and buy actual £500 one, but a different one. Yeah, because it's how it gives me the satisfaction. I'm satisfied, or I get my satisfaction by buying the expensive goods than the. Yeah, go on.
I think can you also say too that eventually there's going to be a point where the price will be too high, but
Yeah,
the quantity would fall. Because I know what you're saying, that it seems like
yeah,
there should
yeah,
be a
yeah.
positive relationship, but I think you probably have to say that it can't go on to infinity. There's
No,
going to
no,
be
yeah,
some
yeah.
point.
That's-
you can get an Hermes Birkin bag for actually have to pay for one once $25,000.
Right. But then,
People are still willing to pay $25,000 for a purse.
yeah, individuals. She's saying there's a point where you cannot go beyond, and that she's right. Actually, there's a problem of economics as well. There, that your luxury product budget will run out. You know, you will run out of money at some point that you reserved for this. Maybe that people buy this, but eventually there is always limit to this. Yeah, it's just, yeah. In terms of yours, it's just looking at the actual sort of simple cases, I guess, that there are people buying it, actual case of demand for a product, right? But when you look at economics, you have to analyze it through the lens of models, not through the lens of actual items that
So this is
only
more-
matters for an individual, but not for the aggregate. Yes, go on.
This is more generic. I think
Yeah.
something about niches.
This is about, yeah, he's talking
Yeah.
about niche individual
Yeah.
sort of cases,
It
yeah.
happens sometimes.
It does happen, I'm not saying
Of
no.
course,
But this is
it
more
does
of a
happen.
generic-
Yeah. It does, I agree with that. It's just,
Crazy.
you're right. It's just, when you look at the model,
Yeah.
the behavior is clear now to us that that sort of behavior, that buying more expensive goods and shifting demand to the right, is not actually the case of positive relationship here, because we have done that already. I think I explained why it is quite a lot. But anyways, is it clear that demand and price is usually negatively related? They never go in positive direction. So the correlation is usually negative when you correlate the data between demand, price and quantity demanded. What's this? Now the next topic is the elasticity of demand with respect to prices. But I think you want to have a brief break before you start the next one, yeah? Okay, the people at the back. Okay, let's have some brief break and then air the room a bit. And maybe we start a bit longer topic now.
Tu veux me passer en dessous? Peut-être ça marche plus. Hein. Tu sais, fais gaffe, hein, parce que moi j'ai fait le feu chez moi.
Ouais, classique.
Avec le plastique, le truc il a commencé à cramer. Je te jure, fais gaffe, j'ai failli foutre le feu chez moi. Vraiment. Non mais je sais pas, il est cassé.
One at a time out of here.
Faut pas faire ça. Ah,
C'est ça.
ça me sert. C'est archi dangereux.